Hey Star Wars fans, welcome to Star Wars Doctrine. I am Cody Dastrup, and this is our Clone Wars show, Clone Wars and Chill. Today we're talking about the most recent aired episode of Clone Wars Season 7, which was Episode 7, called Dangerous Debt. It hit Disney Plus on Friday, as they all do, and I am a little late getting this video up, so I apologize, but there's been a lot of controversy actually within this episode and lots of stuff to process and to take in, which actually makes it even more fun to talk about, I think. So I have my opinions, and they don't necessarily have to line up with yours, and yours don't have to line up with mine, but we can still discuss and have a good, fun breakdown of this episode. So it basically, let's see where to start. Well, I'll give you the fortune cookie first. I always love these fortune cookies. It says, who you were does not have to define who you are. That was a fortune cookie for this episode, and I think it refers a lot about Ahsoka and how she's kind of running from her past right now. And I think later on we find out that maybe some of the ways other Jedi act doesn't necessarily reflect who she is as a person. She might be even a little bit better than that, because Ahsoka really embodies, like, I don't know, maybe what the Jedi should have been to some degrees, and I really like that. It also kind of reflects on Rafa and how she starts to realize that what she did, getting her and her sister into this, might not have been the best stuff to bring her little sister into, and she always tries to defend herself by saying she's doing what's best for the family, but maybe she's realizing that she's actually wrong at this point, and that wasn't best for her and for her sister. So the episode, I think one of the most frustrating things for me about this episode was the fact that we start off with them in prison, which is where we left off before, and we end up in the exact same place. And that's the main complaint I've seen going around. You know, it's just like, it makes it feel like a filler episode when you start and end at the same exact place. And, I've seen a lot of defense in saying, well, Clone Wars has always had filler episodes, and there was, specific things that move the plot, and I do agree, and we'll get into some of those, because there definitely was some interesting aspects to this episode, but ultimately, I personally did find it frustrating that we ended up in the exact same place that we began. I just think that they could have done that a little bit better to make it feel a little less like we just went nowhere. There were some exciting fight scenes, but ultimately at the end, you're just like, we're really just right back here, like, what was the point of this, And I know a lot of people feel that way. But like I said, if you enjoyed this episode and you don't agree with me that was lame, then that's totally good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I definitely, like I said, there's not a single thing in Star Wars that I don't at least find some enjoyment in, like, even though this wasn't my favorite episode, probably my least favorite so far, there's still awesome things in it that I would love and that I can't wait to talk about. So we'll get into that. But basically it starts off with some of these torture sessions by this 8D series droid, which you can also see in Return of the Jedi. And then the Pike boss, Marg Krim, he's grilling them for information on what happened to the spice, which, they're acting like they don't know anything about it or where it is, or we can get it. They give millions of excuses, but we ultimately know Trace just dumped it like a moron, so we're not going to be getting that back. One of the biggest plot points, and I think one of the things I liked the most, was that Ahsoka learns finally why Trace and Rafa kind of have a bad taste in their mouth about the Jedi, and it was because, well, really cool callback, when Zero the Hutt escaped prison on Coruscant, which was Hostage Crisis, which I believe is in, Season 2, and that was when Cad Bane is all involved in that, and there's a speeder crash, and apparently the Jedi had to make a decision to, avoid this speeder from hitting something, and it ended up killing Rafa and Trace's parents. And they were really upset about it, and especially upset because whichever Jedi this was that caused that to happen pretty much said, hey, I had to make a choice, but don't worry, the Force will be with you. And that was supposed to be their comforting message to these two orphaned kids. And I think it's implied pretty heavily that Luminara was the one who was the Jedi. Number one, it kind of sounds like her, but number two, they said the green skin, And I think that was meant to be that because Ahsoka also kind of had a relationship with Luminara. It wasn't just some unknown Jedi master to her. That was someone she looked up to and was the master of her friend. So I think that was definitely where they were going with that. And, that is kind of the attitude of the Jedi sometimes, and it's not very sympathetic. You would think the Jedi would have tried to do more for these kids and taken them under their wing or tried to provide for them or help them or at least give them more comfort than, don't worry, the Force will be with you, especially to some people who don't really necessarily know much about the Force or believe in the Force. It's like you can tell them that, but at the end of the day, you still need to make them feel the love and comfort. And obviously the Jedi have resources. They should have done something more for them. But you start to see kind of why some people have a bad taste of the Jedi. And I think that's one thing that Emperor Palpatine, when he becomes the Emperor, kind of is able to convince people in the galaxy that the Jedi were the bad guys because, well, there are a lot of people who didn't know the Jedi, didn't meet them in person, or if they did, they might have had bad experiences like this with them. So Rafa and her sister, Trace, are probably one of the people who would have fallen into the category of, yeah, Jedi are bad. Let's hunt them down. Let's have an empire. And I'm sure a lot of people felt that way, especially in the underworlds of Coruscant, it sounds like. So obviously you can't blame them for being, against the Jedi in that regards. So I thought that was one of the more interesting parts of this episode. I would have loved if they would have done some sort of flashback to it, to some of the scenes that are already in that episode, and then also maybe to Luminara telling them that. That would have been really cool, really impactful. Like Ahsoka could have been almost like envisioning it and just kind of taking that hard. But she starts to recognize, once again, like I said, Ahsoka is really, in a lot of ways, a character that's above the Jedi, the typical Jedis, the Jedi are, in my opinion, just because, the Jedi definitely have their flaws, but Ahsoka, she's pretty level-headed for the most part, and walking away from the Order, I think, gives her some clarity, and she just really trusts in the Force opposed to just following the rules of the Jedi, which I really like about her. So we get to see Ahsoka use a little more Force powers in this episode, which I'm like, you should just tell them already that you're a Jedi. Like, I get that she's nervous, but maybe she's just waiting for the right time. I kind of thought that it would happen this episode, that they'd find out, but it sounds like it's going to be next episode, because I'm sure they will find out. I thought it was funny how she used her Force to push Trace to be able to jump over that big old gap where she would have fallen to her death, and Trace thinks she did it on her own, and I'm just laughing because I'm picturing like later down the road, Trace is like, I remember I can make big jumps, and tries to like a way bigger jump than she can make, but Ahsoka's not there, and so she just falls. I can totally picture something like that happening because of Trace being, kind of impulsive and everything like that, but pretty funny. And then Ahsoka leaps over them. I don't know how they didn't see, but there's so many signs, like they should realize what's going on, but they're dumb and they're not realizing it. So for whatever reason, Ahsoka wants to keep a secret a little longer, but I'm interested to find out how they find out or how they're told. And I think that the Mandalorians we see coming up here soon in the episode are going to play a part in that as well. One thing that was kind of a fun that I saw pointed out was how Trace running through that hall kind of screaming and shooting the stormtroopers really was a kind of a callback to Han Solo. Clone Wars does so good with this. I thank Dave Filoni for that. Really good at doing fun callbacks and mirroring characters in a good way, because that's so subtle but just really cool. And she also dumped Spice and is kind of in that same boat as Han was, so there's definitely some similarities in the characters. And it'd be interesting to see if there's any more as the episodes progress. I don't know if Trace will ever appear later down the road in Star Wars lore. I'm not a huge fan of these sisters, to be honest with you personally, so I don't really care if they do, but it's definitely a possibility. You never know. And so it's kind of fun that there's some similarities in character there. Definitely give you a vision of Han running through the Death Star halls as she was running through the prison. So when they do escape prison, they actually are being watched by some Mandalorians, and I thought the Mandalorians were just, their armor looked awesome, by the way. And it's Ursa Wren, who is the mother of Sabine Wren from Rebels, and also with her is Bo-Katan. And I thought that was really cool. They had, the only way we really know that is because they actually credited them, the voice actresses in the credits of the episode. So definitely was Bo-Katan and Ursa Wren. So really fun to see how that's going to play out. She says that, we have a common enemy, so let's keep track of her. She could be of use. Makes me wonder if they're on the planet for Ahsoka. I have to assume that the common enemy is Darth Maul, who we know is going to play a very big role in the next arc. There's one more episode left in this arc, which is just the Ahsoka's Underworld arc. That's going to lead into the Siege of Mandalore. So that means this next episode, I'm sure we're going to get Bo-Katan reaching out to Ahsoka in some way. Maybe that's how they find out she's a Jedi, and the sisters find out Ahsoka's a Jedi. Obviously, Bo-Katan already knows, and they ask her for help. They say, hey, this is what's going on. We need you to come help us with this Maul problem. And maybe, I don't know if the sisters are going to get brought into it in that way as well. But it'd be interesting to see if they continue on through the rest of this season, or if this is going to be the last episode that they're in. But yeah, so going forward, like I said, I think we're going to get, in this next episode, we're going to get the Mandalorians meeting up with Ahsoka. Maybe they're the ones who rescue them from prison, and in return, they ask Ahsoka to come help them out. It's kind of my guess, but we'll find out here soon. Like I said, whether you like this episode or not, I would love to hear some of your thoughts. I've actually had some awesome discussions already from this episode. Sometimes controversy can breed really good discussions, and I do enjoy that about Star Wars. Obviously, there's always going to be differences in what people are looking for in episodes and things like that. So I'd love to hear some of your guys' feedback and thoughts on this episode. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, please leave a like on the video or a comment. And subscribe to the channel. And thank you so much for watching. And as always, may the Force be with you.